Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we'll continue with part 4 of the Mercedes-Benz E-Class Coupe project. In the previous lesson, we spent some time working on the roof, the front, and the rear glass, and now let's move on to the side. Now, the thing about the side glass is it actually has to roll down, so it's when you are in a production surfacing environment, it's actually barrel shaped, but because I don't have engineering knowledge, I am just going to stick with a rail. Now usually the engineer supplies with it, but I don't have specification, so let's just go ahead and create a rail to replicate what basically the shape of the side glass. So I'm just going to start with a curve over here. I'm just going to strike a curve, 2-degree curve like this. I'm just going to go to the top view like this, and I'm just going to somewhat follow the shape of the glass like this. Now it doesn't have to be exact because we do have to do a lot of massaging. And the reason for that is because we have to project, we have to create a rail surface first, and we have to project onto the glass so that we can actually trim it. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a curve from the front view, and I'm just going to create a curve like this, somewhat mimicking the shape of the A-pillar like this. And now I'm just going to create a rail. So for this one, I'm just going to create a rail. It's going to be a parallel sweep mode, so it's going to be 1 and 1. And now let's go to the side and lay out some curves for the window. So I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to pick this curve and somewhat follow the shape of the glass. Now for this, for the projection, you actually have to pick the top of the molding over here in order to create the projection curve for the glass, because that's where the actual it actually touches. So this would be the line that you want to use. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and just move the CVs around until I can hit that point, and let's see what we can do. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Although I think I want to push both ends down, so I'm just going to move the pivot here because the height here is good. I'm just going to do no proportional scale, just using my right mouse button, so that both ends slide down. Looks like this probably needs to do a little bit more, slide down a little bit more. So I'm going to just push it down, and I'm just going to push this up. And I think that's pretty close. Okay, so next up, I do need a projection curve for the upper. And actually, let's just project this one first. So I'm going to say project. Just bring the menu up like this. And let's just check the location. So this is the line that you can compare this to. So you'll see that this is actually pretty close here, but not close here, and it's close here. So which means that this this curve over here needs to be adjusted. But before I do that, let me just project some curves for this portion. And to that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, let's see. I wonder, no, I don't have the curves anymore. Okay, no, actually I do. So I'm going to bring this curve, and this curve like this. And actually there might be some adjustment. So let's use those curves. So I'm going to I'm not going to use these, and I'm just going to turn them off for now. And what I'm going to do is I don't want to untrim this original surface, so I'm just going to copy and paste like this. I'm going to say hide unselected, and I'm just going to untrim here, here, and here to extract the curves. So it's going to be just duplicate. Oh, just going to turn that off. Duplicate here, here, and here, and that is what I'm going to use. These surfaces are no longer necessary, so I'm just going to delete them. And I'm just going to, I think offset might be the best option. So I'm just going to offset. Oh, let's grab the curves like this. And I'm going to offset, just going to point them all inboard like that. And again, what I want to do is just hit the inside portion of the trim. I don't know what this line is supposed to be, but I think well, actually, I'm not sure. Well, anyways, I'm just going to hit that portion, and I'm going to just combine the stretch tool to make sure that I hit all of them. So I'm just, for this one, I think I actually need to go up a little bit. So let's move this up, and I'm going to extend this back. Give it a little bit more crown. It's okay if the shape is a little bit off, because they are two different lines. So I'm just going to try to get as close as possible. Looks like this one actually needs to move down a little bit more. So I'm just going to use a stretch tool like this, and this one I'm just going to snap it over here. Actually, let's extend it just a little bit more. Extend it just a little bit more like that, and I'm going to hit this point and the rest. Oh, okay, so it looks like that followed quite well. And I'm just going to make sure that this curve, the CV location is good. Okay, so when I strike a curve between this point and this point, and this one is above, you don't want this point to be below, because otherwise it's going to create a kink. So I think this location is pretty good. And let me just extend it back like this, because I think it's a little bit too long. Okay, so I think it's pretty close. The front, on the other hand, I probably want to point this down somewhere here. Give it a little bit more crown over here, like this. Okay, so I think I'm hitting those points quite well. So let's take a look. So for this one, I'm just going to snap it over here. Okay, so we do need a large filler over here, but I think it's looking pretty close. So let's project and see if our target is good. Okay, so not too bad. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to project over here. And now let's just take a look at it from the top view. Okay, so you'll be able to notice that some lines are close. Actually, it looks pretty close from the side view, but the only problem is, of course, I have to match this one. Now, because this is supposed to be mimicking the barrel, so what you want to do is make sure that the CV is somewhat close to the middle, because when you turn the curvature, it's going to have a very constant acceleration, so constant radius, and looks like ours is a little bit off. So I mean, what you can do is you can try to create a actual like an arc, but that's going to be a little bit hard to manipulate, so let's just stick with this one. That's it. However, I'm going to make I'm just going to shift the CV a little bit downwards, so that it does have a somewhat of an arc shape. And if I check the radius, let's go ahead. Well, actually, let's curvature. I'm going to say min max radius, and let's check it. Okay, so right now it's a 2600 to 2800, so it's pretty close. I mean, it's still the one at the bottom has a little bit bigger radius, but what you can do is you can probably like just slide it. Slide it a little bit like this. So now it's about 2600, so on both the top and the bottom, so it's a little bit closer. You don't need to be super precise, because right now the way of constructing the side glass isn't what you do in a production environment. In a production environment, the engineer will supply you a sheet, but since we don't have an engineer on board, let's stick with what we can. Okay, so right now you'll see that all the lines are pretty close except for this one. So I am going to pull this out so that we can adjust this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the middle out so that this radius or this curve and the canvas somewhat matches. But as you can see, I'm pulling it out and it's not matching quite well. What you want to do is just make sure the gesture is close. So I'm just going to just move the CVs here like this. I think that's pretty good. And I'm just going to pull, because I'm actually trying to hit this line. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all the curves and just push it up like this. So let's try to hit this one first, and before we move on to the others. Now the glass at the end, it's not exactly super critical because that the glass, this one actually doesn't need to roll down. It's the first two, or the middle two I should say, that needs to roll down. So this needs to have a very nice gesture and you want to hit those lines. So I'm just going to move this down. I think that's pretty good. However, I think this one needs a little bit of work. Okay, so not too bad. Now, the only, so I think the gesture on the top is good. However, you'll see the front windshield or the A-pillar line is not. So in this case, what you want to do is, well, this actually needs to offset a little bit more inboard, and this actually needs to go in. And the reason why is because of the trim. What you see from the top view isn't actually where the line for the top glass is. It is for the outboard side of the trim. And let me show you what I mean. So let me just grab a picture. Hopefully this one's good. Let me just fit it to size. Okay, so if you see this image over here, you'll see that there's a little offset between the chrome molding over here and on the where it actually touches the glass. And as you can see, there's a little offset, which means whatever line that we see from here, it needs to go in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this curve, use the stretch tool, and I'm just going to push it in a little bit until someone hits the gesture of all of them. The only problem though, I think this is a little bit too off. Otherwise it looks pretty close. However, I do think I probably have to do some massaging. So I think, well, let's take a look. So I think hitting this line is not a bad idea. However, we probably do need to do some adjustments. And I'm going to pull this out. So let's see. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reduce the amount of crown that we have on the curve over here. Because the more crown that we have on the glass, usually that twists the A-pillar a little bit more. So as long as the gesture is similar, I would prefer to minimize the amount of crown on this one. So let's see if I can just pull that a little bit more in. And actually, well, I'm not sure. Maybe I should just pull it back out because we are getting farther away from target. Okay. And let's pull this curve out like this, just a little bit, and I am going to reduce the amount of crown. So let's grab this one. I'm just going to non-proportional scale it. Oh, actually, let's make it a little bit close. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend this curve like this until it's a little bit closer in height. And I'm just going to move this one up here. Oh, not here, but up here. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to target this point or be close to it, so that it's a little bit easier to manipulate. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. I did pull it out and the crown's been reduced. I think I need to pull this one out, so let's do that. Like that. Okay, so that looks good. It's closer here, but it's still quite far apart here. So let's try to adjust a little bit. I don't know why usually the A-pillar is a little bit off. I highly doubt that it's, well, actually, it's thicker. It could be thicker. Sometimes you usually have a little bit more offset that goes down, but I think that for this one, it might be a little bit too much. So let's go ahead and check to see if we can improve this. I think I am going to push this on a little bit more inboard. So let's just NUV, grab it like this. And I'm also going to pull this one a little bit more this way. And I actually might change. I'm going to push this curve a little. Oh, what happened? Okay, so I'm just going to push this curve a little bit more inboard like this, because as I push it this way, it gets a little bit closer to the A-pillar location, so it's a little bit closer. Now what you want to do is you want to make sure that all the gestures are similar, so let's do that first. Like that, and this one I'm going to push it up a little bit, so I'll just grab these two and push it up. just a little bit so that it's within tolerance, but it's a little bit more outboard. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good, but it's still not as close as I would like. So I think what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, I'm going to see if I can just pull this out a little bit more. Now, this does take a lot of practice and a lot of adjustment, but this is probably going to get you very close to how it is in production. Now, it looks like there's a little bit of slope that is a little bit of a distance between the A-pillar line on the canvas and this line on the projected curve on surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a stretch tool and just pull everything out like this. So I'm just going to try and get as closely to this line as possible. I think that's looking a little bit better. So I think at least gesture wise, it's pretty darn close. And let me just, I think we are about on target. So I'm just going to push this one a little bit more so that it's a little bit closer here. And I think that looks pretty close. Okay, so I think this gives us a pretty good, I guess, surface or the basis to start with. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's go ahead and, well, actually, I'm not going to trim it. Let's start with the body side. Now, if you look at this image over here, well, actually, let me grab a different one. Hopefully this one will show. Okay, so yes, I think this is a good one to show. Okay, so if I zoom into this image, you'll see that, well, the window's down, but where the window is, you'll see a little bit of trim, and you will see a little offset between the glass and this surface over here. So I am going to try and create that. So back to Alias. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, well, I don't think I'm going to manipulate this anymore. So what I'm going to do is, actually, let's take a look and see if there's anything more than we can do to make this fit a little bit better. Okay, first of all, let me just extend this and make sure that it matches. So I'm going to snap it over here, like that. And I think this is probably as close as it's gonna get. I might try pushing this one up just a little bit so that this one is pushed in. Okay, I like the gesture of this one, although I can probably push it just a little bit like that. Okay, so I think that's pretty close. All right, so let's go ahead and work on the trim. Now, this is going to basically dictate the shape of the body side, so you want to make sure to match it as much as possible. However, that said, well, there's a good chance that we might be manipulating this a little bit later. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to extend this one a little bit back here so that we have a curve all the way to here. And I'm just going to move this curve down like this. Now, everything should stay as is because I just slid it down. So it looks like it did. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and strike some curves. So for the section, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull, if you look at this image, well, basically it tells you how the section looks. So we do need a little bit of draft surface over here. And it's the surface where the peak is, or the theoretical. It goes down here, and we have a little, that's where the body color or the door starts. So let's go ahead and pull a curve down. I'm just going to pull it from the top view like this, and I'm just going to do a rail. Now for this one, I am going to do natural sweep mode because I prefer to keep the thickness as similar as possible. And from the top view, you can just sort of compare if this is good. Looks like it needs to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to grab it with a stretch tool, and I'm just going to lengthen it until we hit the target. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And now, I think the thickness is pretty good. I might make it just a slightly thicker. So let's just go a little bit more. Something like that. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now this curve does need a little bit of section from the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the front view or the rear view and just going to pull the CV down. And I'm going to just bring the whole thing down like this. Now from the side view, you just want to make sure that you're not deviating too much from the canvas. And you just want to make sure that this has a somewhat similar shape to the chrome piece or the section that you see on the picture over here. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good, and I'm just going to, yeah, I think this should be okay. And now let's create the other section. So I'm going to again grab the curve, grab a degree 2 curve like this, and I'm just going to bring it down, and I'm going to create a rail based on that. So it's going to be 1-on-1, and again I'm just going to use natural sweep mode. Okay, so the height seems pretty good. However, I think, okay, so I think this curve can move up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, let's see, where is it? So I'm just going to grab this CV, and you'll see that it's a little bit lower compared to the canvas. So I'm just going to move that up like that, and the center can probably move down a little bit. Ever so slightly. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. All right, and let's just check it back from the top. Okay, so I think that's a little bit more constant all the way around. So pretty happy with that. And let's go ahead and push this out, push this down a little bit more. Oh, okay, so because of the curve change, the curve and surface change, it looks like the location of the curves need to be relocated. So let's just put it here, and I'm just going to use the stretch tool to make sure that the height is good. So let's grab this curve, stretch, and pull it down a little bit so that it matches the bottom line on the canvas. And looks like that's quite close. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just pull this out from the top view, because this is the line that you want to hit. So I'm just going to pull it out like this. Now, pulling it out is one thing, but you do want to make sure that this section is close to the image as possible. Right now, I think it's I pulled it out probably a little bit too much. However, I am going to add a little bit of crown, because if you look at this, not this one, but this one, you'll see that it has a decent amount of crown on the surface. So I'm going to do that, and let's just take a look and compare. Okay, so I think the top one can probably, I don't think it has to be, it can probably be a little bit flatter. So let me just bring the CV down. And this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a crown, but I think I'm going to just pull it back a little bit, because right now I think it has too much slope. So I'm just going to grab this one and just pull it back. Now this line could be, the reason why it looks like that is probably could be due to the little step you see over here. Now it's kind of hard to see. Maybe it's a little bit easier to see over here. Now, when you're looking at this, you'll be able to see basically the chrome section and a step on the metal itself, which provides kind of a shelf for this this chrome bit to sit on. So in this case, because it, at least compared to the canvas, I think this popped out a little bit too much. So I think what I'm going to do is try to target the bottom right here, for the chrome to sit on, and that's going to provide us with a little bit of thickness for the door part. Okay, so I think that's probably, well, I still think that's a little bit too much, but well, we'll have to see. Okay, so now that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draft the surface out, just a flat surface like this, And for this one, I'm going to give it a draft angle of 3 degrees. And from the side view, you just want to make sure that it's actually drafting down, not up, in which case I think this one is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, put a negative in front of it, and I'm going to say update. So now it's pointing down, and that looks good. Okay, so right now it's a little bit too thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe make it like 3 mils. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe I'll do 4 or 5. I think 5 might be good. Okay, so not too bad. However, I think this line probably needs to be expanded out a little bit. So I think it might be getting a little bit wider as it goes towards the rear. So I might have to do a little bit of adjustment on that. Okay, that said, however, I think we are ready to do a little bit of cleanup. So let's do that first. So right now you'll see there's a multiples of span. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see, there are several ways to do this. So what I like to do though is I like to use align. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab align tool. I'm going to set the continue to 0, and I'm going to just hit this point like this. And I'm going to say position. That's fine. I'm going to have blending on, because whatever section this, whatever happens to the first row, I want the same thing to happen to the second and the third rows of CV. So I'm going to make sure that extra CV rows 2 is on. Blend factor will be 0. So whatever movement happens to the first row, everything follows exactly. Now this is the important bit. Position influence I will set to maximum, because that's going to tell the computer that I want to match the shape exactly, even if it means moving the CVs around by the software. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to reduce the spans to 1, and I'm going to up the degree until I can hit the target of position. Okay, so it looks like 4 degree hits it. And I'm just going to check to make sure that it's still it's a good tight fit. So I'm going to do a curve to curve, compare the distance, and it looks like it's maximum distance is 0.0026, which is good. It's not excellent, so I think I'm going to just up it to 5 degrees and just call it done. Okay, so 0.0004, that's pretty good. And because everything else is history, looks like everything fit as well. Okay, so now the deviation over here, I am going to try and fit it, and it could probably mean that I probably need to pull the CV out over here, but I am going to leave that until we work on the body side. Okay, so unfortunately, it looks like the lines are a little bit missing over here, but well, we'll have to play with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a rail again. So let's go ahead and grab a degree 2 curve over here. I'm just going to mimic the section from the front view. Well, probably do something like that, and I'm going to pull the CV out like this. So what you want to do is right now this body side has a lot of gesture, so you want to hit those. However, I think I might want to study this a little bit. Let's grab this image. I'm going to... Okay, so I think maybe this one will show better. Okay, so I think this probably... I'm seeing a couple of sections over here. So, well, it could work to our advantage. Usually what happens is this section just goes straight down. So what you have to do is you want to make sure that this line follows exactly the line over here. But this one, I think that is not the case. So I think I have to be a little bit careful of what I do regarding the body side. So I do definitely think that there's a section that's going down before it slopes here. So I think I'm going to do that first. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to grab a curve like this. Well, that doesn't really change the fact that we have to grab this curve. So I am going to just grab it like this. And I think on this one, I'm going to make it a little bit more straight. So let's go ahead and do a rail. So it's going to be 1 and 1 like this. And basically this is going to mimic this downward slope, and looks like there is a little bit bend. So I think the body side, I might have to do it separately. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate it. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to duplicate it exactly. I'm just going to duplicate with the degree fit curve to a degree 2. Yes, so there's a little bit of deviation. That is okay. I'm just going to pull it out. And what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, I think I need to delete the construction history. I'm just going to pull it out over here, and I'm going to use the extend tool to snap it over here. And I'm going to use the stretch tool to pull this out like this. And as you can see, there's a little, well, there's actually quite a discrepancy between the section we have here and here. So one of the things I can probably do is, well, let's just hit the line first and see how that works, because I think this is going to depend on both sections. So let's do that. We're going to just try to hit the curves first like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a rail. So it's going to be 1 and 1. And this one I'm going to angle it a little bit differently, somewhere like this. And because it does have a bit of a crown, let's give it a little bit of crown like this. Now the reason why it might look negative is because we have a little bit of surface that is a little bit vertical in nature, and one is a little bit horizontal. So there's going to be a filler in the middle, but I do feel like the general shape of it has a little bit crown, a positive crown like this. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a rail like this, and I'm just going to make sure that they intersect. So I'm just going to bring it, why is it not hitting? Oh, okay, so there we go. And I might just bring it down a little bit like this so that they actually hit. And well, there's a little gap between the two, so maybe this one needs a bi-rail. Okay, so in order to do that, I think what I'm going to do is, instead of doing this way, well, first of all, oh, okay, so my mistake, I think we actually need to hit the side view first. Well, the gesture should be pretty close, so I don't think it's going to be too hard trying to hit it. However, I'm just going to make sure that, okay, I think it probably needs a little bit less crown like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this curve over here, and I'm just going to project the curve to this portion here. So let's just do that. And I am going to, well, this one I'm going to push it a little bit inboard like this. And let's grab a freeform blend. It's going to be position. And I'm going to set a crown. It's going to be, okay, and I'm just going to grab this curve on surface and the curve here. I'm just going to say default on both sides. And let's give it a little bit of crown. 0.01, maybe a little bit more. And I think this should serve as the basis. Okay, if you see right here, you'll see that the peak is actually reversing over here, which is not good. And as you can see, the section is a little bit flowing a little bit weirdly. So let's go ahead and fix that. But I think what I need to do is, I think this needs to be a little bit more vertical to fit the A-pillar shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a stretch tool like this, and I'm just going to push it a little bit for now. Now this all probably needs to be refined quite a lot, but let's just leave it like that for now. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop some of these shapes first, including the body side, before moving on to this one, because I think this one is going to need quite a bit of work. Well, the problem is right now, because the surface is blended, it's kind of hard to determine what angle this is supposed to be. I think it's supposed to follow the A-pillar shape. So maybe I'll just do a comparison between the two. So what I'm going to, in order to do that, I think I'm just going to grab a fit curve over here like this, and I'm just going to project it. Well, let's go ahead and project it onto the surface over here like this from Y, and let's just make it a little bit longer. And let's go ahead and pull this out. Oh, let's grab the curve, pull it out. And as you can see over here, you'll see that there's a bit of an angle difference, but I feel like this should be a little bit more vertical. Now, there are, I think, multiples of surface blend are supposed to be blending back into that. So I don't know if this is a really good idea to push this in, but we'll have to see. So first of all, I'm just going to push it in so that it's very close to the A pillar. Now, I don't want to do it too much because, well, that does create quite a bit of a section difference. So maybe I'll just push it back out. There is supposed to be a fillet, so let's start with that. So it's going to be chord G2, and I'm just going to create a small fillet. Maybe that is too big, maybe 20. Oh, even that's not working. Oh. I wonder if it's just because I didn't hit build. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it looks like 50. Okay. So it is getting smaller, and I don't know why it's not creating this portion, but whatever. Let's go 40. Oh, no, this is absolutely useless. I do need the fillet to be a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can do an explicit Bezier surface that doesn't extend it. Okay, so I'm just going to use extend. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I think that's going to work. So I'm going to just say, I'm going to go quite big, 60. Looks like extend and gets it to here. But it doesn't usually extend, goes all the way to the back, but I don't know why it just stops in the middle. It's fine, but I do feel like maybe this might be too much angle. I would have to compare this section. One thing I can do is use this curve over here. So right now we have a fit curve over here. I'm just going to, we need to project it over here. So let's go ahead and grab this curve, and I'm going to grab this curve over here. Just going to shape it close. It doesn't have to be exact. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab both, and I'm just going to make sure that they're in the same line, because right now they're not from the top view. So I'm going to say just snap it to the middle like this. And I am going to do a curve fillet between the two. Let's see. So it's going to be chord, it's going to be G2. Quarter length, let's do maybe 30. I think it needs to be bigger, maybe 100. And I'm just going to automatic trim. I think can be a little bit bigger. So let's do 130. I think that's a little bit closer. So what I can do is I can just grab all the surfaces that's in here, and I'm just going to project from the side like this. And basically that's going to give you some idea of how, well, if you compare it to the picture, if the angle is correct. Now, if this line is visible from the canvas, which it isn't, that's a little bit weird. Okay, so even though I think we are hitting the body side correctly, you'll see that the location is a little bit off. So I think this probably needs to be adjusted a little bit. Now this tells me that either the canvas is a little bit rearward, or well, the top view canvas is a little bit rearward, or I think the location might be a little bit off. So I think we might need to check to see if the location of the canvas is good. Okay, so it's a little bit off here, and from the front view, it's a little bit off here too, because I think this is the line that's supposed to be projected, which is actually close to this line, whatever this is. But I don't think that is actually true. So I think we have some adjustments to make. That's it. However, I think I'm going to continue with that in the next video. So let's end this one here. Okay, so that is it for part 4. We will continue in the next tutorial, and thank you guys for watching.